Commence primary ignition.
Hey there, friends, fans, and collectors. It's Wednesday, so we're talking Andor. Let's get going. This episode was entitled Nakima 5, which ends up being the name of the prison planet that Andor gets sent to. The Imperials decide to send him to a labor camp, and he is sent off on transport, and he is shackled coldly right to his seat there as he's transported from planet. We arrive on Nakima 5, and we see that it's this mainly water planet that is a subterranean Imperial labor camp built into it. This is a very uniquely designed prison. It kind of reminded me of the Hive in Raccoon City, where it was built down into the underground. After that, we see our friend Cyril, who is visited by the ISB. He has been just logging file after file of warnings about Cassian Andor, and to quote Danger Mira, it has engaged the curiosity of the ISB. I really like how she said that. It was very secret police, spooky. She interviews Cyril further and tries to figure out why he thinks he's special and what information he thinks he has to actually find Andor. He's given access to Blevins' file, which he previously wasn't allowed to see, and he's made to cross-examine it and see if there's anything he can pick out from it. He's unable to, and Diodramiro tells him to back off. We also get another neat meeting in the ISB conference room where they go over their path and their idea for how they're tightening their grip on the galaxy. We get a further deeper report on the stolen Starpath unit, as well as all the rest of the stolen technology around the galaxy from Imperial facilities. We also learn that Lutheran is known by the ISB, obviously, but still a serious mystery, and they've codenamed him Axis. And their current plan is to see how they can identify Axis by driving out his other contacts. Now, this is exactly what Lutheran and his assistant were worried about in the previous episode, and we see that pan out further later. It did a great dive into the kind of prison theory and prison design of an Imperial Empire. We see the first Imperial sneaker I think we've ever seen, although it's still more of a work boot, and that's the ones that the Imperial guards were wearing in the introduction. We see them marching around in these, they look like snowboard boots, but we learn later they have a really serious purpose. Having taken their shoes from them in the transport, we thought it was just a dehumanizing kind of factor, but it actually adds to the punishment and the complacency of people in the prison. Now, the entire floor is electrified, and with the simple command or based on any kinds of infractions they do, with an interesting note that the guards were also carrying DH-17s. Now, that's the Rebel blaster pistol, and I always thought that this was a uniquely Rebel design, but of course, the Rebels spun off of anything else that was in the galaxy, so these pistols were obviously in circulation elsewhere prior. And due to the outcome of the PORD orders that we saw signed in last episode, Cassian is hurriedly moved through the court system and immediately moved to an expedited prison sentence of 6 years. On Nakima 5, we see the ideals of the Imperial system being put into full force. That, of course, being that people don't matter, only productivity matters, and if you would like to matter as a person in the Imperial's eyes, you have to increase your productivity for the Empire. This also demonstrates the same framework that we've seen with the Imperial taking over of cultures, and that is giving them the illusions of freedom while taking away much more. And so this in the prison system being the very cleanly, clean area they live in, all of the tasteless food they can eat and water, no bars on the doors, and most importantly, responsibilities to watch over each other, to do work, and most importantly, this system is built on the idea that everyone is watching everyone. Being a factory prison, it's broken down into certain levels. Each level has different teams and different rooms, and every room and every team is competing for their quota for the day as to who can be most productive. The most productive gets rewarded with taste added to their food, whereas the least productive get electrocuted. So it's a really intense prison system, and it is grueling to think that Cassian could be stuck in this place for 6 years' time. It's not lost to us, as I'm sure it's not lost on Andor, that he has been sentenced to this for crimes he didn't commit. Whereas in reality, if he were to be sentenced for the actual crimes he has done, the punishment would be much, much, much more severe. The entire design of this prison facility was to keep the prisoners from fraternizing with each other. This really adds to the added competition and the levels of punishment and reward that are doled out for your productivity. Prisoners like Andy Serkis's Kino are given certain leadership responsibility roles, and with that responsibility comes the mentality to report their fellow prisoners to protect themselves and their sentence. This is the Empire moving from peacetime, using policing to increase and enforce their authoritarian regime. The most important introduction in this prison system is in Andor's group, on Andor's table and his floor, is Melshi. So our favorite dude from Rogue One, a hero of Rogue One, we finally are introduced to him. We knew he was going to be in this series, and here he is. Now the Imperial takeover on Ferrix has gotten even more fierce, and Marva has fallen ill. Now we hear from Bix and the friend that Cassian had that Marva has been scouting for tunnels, for ways for the rebels to come. There's a great quote of Bix saying that she's a rebel, but I am worried that she's getting very ill. Now Bix does make a call on the radio out to Luthen, trying to let him know and let Andor know that his mother is sick. Unfortunately, this call on the radio gets intercepted by the ISB because of course it does, and they crack down further on Bix and her friend. It's important to note that we see Vel and Cinta on Ferrix also. They know that Andor's mom and people that he cares about are here, and they're watching and waiting to see him return. We get a deeper dive into these characters and how devoted to the cause Cinta is. We get a great quote from her that says, "The cause comes first, you know that," which means, even if we need our time and time off, the rebellion comes first, and that is bam! That hits Vel right, right in the side. On Coruscant, we see Clea receiving the message that Bix sent out, and then coaching Luthen on being better, being sharper, being a better spy. And to that end, they destroy and shut down the signal transmissions that they were receiving from Ferrix. They close it down. Luthen agrees to shutting down the comms to Ferrix, and we see a pattern between these two pairs of rebels that is Cinta and Vel and Clea and Luthen, where the second in command is really reminding kind of the leader why they're in the cause and why it's necessary. We then get another dinner party at the Mothman establishment. These guys are always having the best cocktail parties, where we are treated to some Chandrillian customs. I really like their toast, which is Sagrona and Sagrona Totem, as well as the squig cocktails. I don't know if people caught that, but it seems to be some kind of live bug or something you put into your cocktail. It oxifies, liquefies, and you drink it. Super metal, super brutal. The way they address it makes it seem kind of barbaric in like a fancy kind of way too. But man, what a cool spacey kind of thing. We also got a bunch of aliens in that room, which was nice to see. We next get a fabulous little jump to Segra Milo, where we see Luthen taking his Fondor craft to meet with Saw Gerrera and the Partisans. And it's a great, great, great way to see him. It's a younger him. We see all the people we know. They're black partisan X-Wings. And we see that Luthen, initially in the formation of the rebellion, gets cooperation between these different cells by trading not only funds, but weapons, technology, and stolen Imperial tech. We got a great phrase from Saw, which I'm definitely going to use now, which is sitting on some dosh, which is just a short for, having some funds in your pocket. I love this. What a Star Wars-y phrase, and it flowed so easily between these two. The job that Luthen is willing to trade technology for is working with a former Separatist leader, Anton Krieger. I couldn't pick up this figure from my memory or from the expanded universe, but we do hear that he is a Separatist leader. We also learn that the Spellhouse power station is Krieger's target, and the intended help of Saw would be air support. So coming in with some X-Wings and doing a zip and dive, supporting the ground forces there at the power station. Saw, of course, turns this down. We know this in his character, but it is a double-edged sword that he is just willing to fight any and all oppressors everywhere. even if those people sometimes agree with him on certain things. That's just who he is and who he's always going to be. Back on Ferrix, having tracked the signal, the ISB has Bix and her friend in custody. We get a really brutal, we don't see it, but we see the aftermath of a really brutal interrogation, and then Bix getting lined up to go next. It is not looking good for Ferrix and this small group of Cassian's friends, and the world that Cassian had been holding on to before is slowly dissolving away. Now, we all know that Cassian isn't completely bought in on the rebellion quite yet, and that's because there's quite a lot of the old him that has kept him grounded. We see in this episode, and especially with the time jump that we see, just a different character than we've seen before. He is broken down by the time jump of 30 days into his 6-year sentence. This work and the life in the Imperial prison is grueling and heartbreaking. We also see in that time frame just one of the people that Cassian's in the cell with kill himself on the rail. Now, there's no bars in this cell, they just have an electrified floor, so he just jumped on the floor. And we just get an emphasis on the brutality of this prison where not only were people, a man killed himself, people were lamenting more about the fact that that team and that workload is going to have an extra hard time getting their quota. And it just hammers in the fact that what the Imperials are doing is they're dehumanizing everybody in this prison system as they go. Let me know what you think of this episode. I really thought it was a great lead up. We know these episodes are done in 3 parts, so this was the middle. This is the calm before either whatever we're going to see next. Thought it was wonderful to finally get an introduction of Melshi. He's such a fabulous character, as well as see Saw Gerrera for the first time in this timeline. Thanks for watching another episode of Binary Sunset Review. As always, I've been Mike. Your likes and your views are greatly appreciated. I hope you have an awesome Halloween costume, a Star Wars one hopefully, lined up. Have a great day out there. Stay safe, stay sane, and remember, the Force will be with you, always.
I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe.